Okay, we're going to take a few minutes to review the instructions that were given a few months back at the SNL orientation regarding filling out your DTime for SNL. And so we're going to get started with the general information. As you all know, the SNL work order is DR0001, so that's the work order you'll be using when you're working OT for the most case OT for SNL. The next thing is task code. Just use the code that you normally use for your facility. And we ask that you use subtask rec for the hours that you work during SNL. Please remember that the SNL work order can only be used for SNL program days and during the SNL program hours from 7 p.m. to 11:30 p.m. All right, so let's talk about DIC work schedule and approved OT. Each DIC for each SNL site is approved for 8 hours of overtime for weeks with 4 program days. And they are approved also for 4 hours for those weeks where there's only 2 program days. So weeks 1 through 6 are weeks with 4 program days. And weeks 7 through 9 are the weeks with only 2 program days. So please remember that. As I mentioned before, the only time you can charge to this work order and receive OT on this work order is between SNL program hours, which is 7 p.m. to 11:30 p.m. And we ask that you work until 10 p.m. In order to receive overtime. So let's take a look at this example here. This is kind of a common example of a timesheet for a director in charge. Up in the top section, you basically just do it exactly as you normally do if you weren't working overtime. Enter your work order for your regular facility, task and subtask. Enter the in and out times for each day that you work. And then also make sure that on this middle section here where it says regular week 1, regular week 2, that it only shows 40 hours. If you, for some reason, end up with more than 40 hours, you've made a mistake up here in the top section. So go back and find out where you made an error and correct it. Your overtime only should be entered in the bottom section here. And what you'll do is code it with variation code PA for paid overtime. Once again, use the SNL work order, task and subtask of your facility, indicate the in and out time, and then just go ahead and carry the hours over to the day of the week that you worked your overtime. Also, as a reminder, it's most likely that the nights you work overtime for SNL that you're entitled to night rate. So in this example here, each of the nights that this particular person worked overtime, they were also entitled to night rate. So as you notice on the bottom section here, basically it's a duplication of the row in the top section with the only difference with the variation code NG. And so please make sure that you add that row in there if you're entitled to night rate so you get credit for it. That's pretty much it for DICs. Let's go on to talk about the rec coordinator. And the rec coordinators have 3 options. One option, the rec coordinator would receive overtime, and the other 2 options, they would not. So let's talk about the 2 non-overtime options first. This option here is actually what we the schedule was before we had overtime for rec coordinators. So you would be working a Tuesday through Saturday schedule. On Tuesdays, you would work whatever schedule is agreed upon between yourself and the DIC and your supervisor. So in this example here, the very first row is for Tuesday, and it shows that person working from 10 to 6:30, 8 hours charged to the regular facility work order. On actual SNL program days, what you'll be doing is you're actually going to use 2 work orders. You're going to use the regular work order for any hours worked prior to 7 o'clock. And then anything after 7 o'clock, you'll use the SNL work order. So in this example here, You'll be working a 3 to 11:30 schedule on SNL program days. So the first row will have a in and out time from 3 to 7, and then that'll be charged to your regular facility work order. And then the last row will be the charge to the SNL work order, and you'll show the hours that you worked from 7 o'clock on. So then on those days, you'll have 3.5 hours charged to your facility work order, and then you'll have 4.5 hours that will be charged to the SNL program. Once again, you'll be working, you'll be entitled to night rate. So make sure you bring those 2 rows down to the bottom section, fill in the information exactly the same, with the exception of using the NG variation code. Okay, situation or scenario number 2. Once again, no overtime in this instance, but the coordinator will be working a 4-10 schedule. So you'll be working 4 days, 10 hours each day. So in this particular situation, the coordinator will work a Wednesday through Saturday schedule, each day working 10 hours. Similar to the previous example, any hours that are worked prior to 7 o'clock need to be charged to the regular work order. So if you see here in the top section, the first row, this person worked from 1 to 7 o'clock, charged to the regular facility work order. And then all hours charged after worked after 7 p.m. were charged to the SNL work order. Also, make sure you bring those rows down to the bottom section so you and code them with the variation code NG so that you receive your night rate. So those are the 2 examples for rec coordinators without overtime. Okay, so let's talk about the example where the majority of coordinators are going to work a schedule where they receive overtime. So the approved overtime for rec coordinators for weeks 1 through 6, those are the weeks with 4 program days in it. You are approved for 12 hours of OT in those weeks. And then the last 3 weeks, week 7 through 9, since there's only 2 program days, the approved OT is 6 hours. Okay, so let's take a look at the example here of a person's schedule working those hours. Tuesday, since it's a non-program day, you discuss with your supervisor and DIC to come up with a 8-hour schedule to work on that day. And then on the actual program days for SNL, any hours prior to 7 p.m. will be charged to your regular facility work order. And then any hours that are worked after 7 p.m. Will be charged to the SNL work order. Now, in this example, because basically what it comes out to when it's 12 hours of OT, that's 3 hours of OT per program day. So there's a differential of 1.5 hours. So what you'll do is you'll have 6.5 hours. You'll come in at, say, if you come in at 12 o'clock, you work till 7 o'clock, charge it to the regular work order. The 1.5 hours from 7 to 8:30 would be charged to the SNL work order and coded with the variation code HW. And then on the very bottom section here is where you would put your overtime. And so you would code that with the variation code PA, charge that to the SNL work order. Task and subtask remain the same. Enter the hours 8:30 to 11:30, and then you would carry that over here as your 3 hours for a total of 12 hours for that week. As I mentioned in the other examples, you'll be entitled to night rate for those days, so you'll have to bring those rows down to the bottom section here. Just duplicate them to what you have on top and make sure that the variation code is NG. Okay, that's about it, pretty much. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to give me a call or send me an email. And let's have a great summer. Thank you.